Lizzie Knights is the head of programs commercial operations at Telegraph Media Group. She co-chairs the Gender Inclusion Network, which she helped establish 4 years ago. She's passionate about empowering women, giving everyone equal opportunities, and is a vocal advocate and active supporter of diversity initiatives, particularly for women and working families. Lizzie, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to it.
Now, the first thing I want to ask you is, I know you've done a lot in your time at Telegraph to help advance women and increase the level of gender equality there. And I'm wondering why it is that you're so passionate about changing the game for women.
I'm really passionate about changing the game for women because I think in 2021 there really shouldn't be a gender imbalance, and I'm really passionate about kind of doing my bit and helping to kind of close the gap, as it were, in any which way that I can. And by doing this in the workplace, for me, it's just something, you know, we spend so much time at work. It's such a huge part of our lives. Just making it a place that is fully inclusive and fully equal. And, you know, for me, the gender pay gap in particular is one that I'm very passionate about. I think, you know, in this day and age, you shouldn't be sitting next to someone at work who, you know, is just because they're male is earning 20%, 30% more than you in terms of the salary when you're doing the same job, and essentially probably sitting behind a computer, as it were, in some cases. So that for me is something that really drives my passion, and it's something that I'm going to kind of continue to work on in the variety of ways in doing so, in order to kind of help do my bit to kind of help close that gap, as it were.
And when we chatted previously, before this conversation, you told me a statistic about the superannuation gap as well. Can you share that?
Yeah, so in terms of the pension.
Yeah. Oh, so, sorry. Well, the pension in the UK, superannuation in Australia. Yes.
Yeah. So something that was brought to my attention quite recently. It was a conversation that was being had. I was listening to a podcast. Was that on average, women have around £100,000 less in their pension to a man, and that equates to a woman having to work an additional 37 years. And that statistic just really kind of hit home, you know, how bad it's been in the past, and actually, like, what does that look like even now, even though we've kind of made small progress with gender pay gap as a country, and from the Telegraph Media Group point of view as a business, what would that look like now? And that's kind of statistic really hit home for me, and it kind of, like, you know, for me, it just kind of keeps me spurred on in the sense of we've got to keep the narrative open. We've got to keep doing you know, what we can and what I can in order to kind of help, you know, close that gap. So yeah, it's just something that was for me like a real sort of eye opener, and really fuels my passion for what I'm doing.
Yeah, I heard recently a similar statistic in Australia, which is, so we have a similar superannuation or pension gap, but here we also have a statistic that sort of was released probably a couple of years ago now, which is that the fastest growing demographic of homeless people is women over the age of 55. And obviously those two things are totally related, because if you have no retirement savings, then you can't afford to live anywhere. And I love what you said, that, you know, in 2021, there just shouldn't be a gender gap anymore. And there still is.
No, there's no excuse for it. There really isn't. So yeah, so but we need to, you know, it's not going to be overnight, it's not going to be instant. And you know, it's everyone has a part to play in it. It might not be, you know, it might not be like a forefront passion for everyone, and that's absolutely fine, but it's just making sure that the awareness is there, that people are informed, that there's the tools in place to kind of help everyone be able to do their bit and to be informed, but also to have kind of a measurement of the progress as well, which for us as a company, you know, we chose to make sure that we published our gender pay gap results last year, because it was in the UK, we were given the option, companies were given the option whether they wanted to publish them or not because of the pandemic. And, you know, for us, it was important that we did kind of keep that measurement and keep that narrative open, and how we're going to be continuing as a business to work towards closing that gap. The real concern for me, and is something that has been sort of talked about in various publications, is the fact that the effect that the pandemic is going to have on the gender pay gap. So where over the last few years we've done so much work to kind of help to kind of reduce that gap, it'll be interesting to see the results for 2020, 2021, as to how the pandemic has impacted the gender pay gap as well, because of all, obviously, you know, the homeschooling, the impacts that, you know, even working from home has on people, with having to kind of, with work-life balances suddenly just becoming like life, as it were. So the two worlds sort of colliding. So it'll be really interesting to see what the result of that is. But I'm expecting there to be a kind of a decrease, as it were, or a kind of like a step back. So why it's been really important for me when I've been working at home during lockdown, to kind of make sure that we're still making all of the tools and resources and all of the like significant calendar of events like International Men's Day, International Women's Day, that we're still recognising and celebrating them in the kind of digital ways that we can, and having those resources available to people. But whether people have the time or not, because obviously everyone's living quite busier lives with the challenges that they face with maybe working from home and having the children at home and things like that, it's like, I fully appreciate that, you know, it's a pandemic. There's been like, you know, everyone's lives have been just shaken up, and, you know, we've all had to kind of adapt and make the changes. So yeah, but it's just making sure for me that I kind of keep that narrative going, and keep sort of pressing for progress, as it were.
Yeah, I love that. Now, in your time at Telegraph, you've actually done a lot of different things to help benefit women and really advocate for equality. And I'm wondering what the one biggest thing, the sort of overarching theme around the work that you've done is. What is it that you really wanted to change and you know, drive in the workplace?
I think for me, it's self-advocacy has been the real thing, especially for women, with, you know, self-promoting. And one of the initiatives that I've kind of got on board with, and it was one that a couple of the ladies from our technology department, they were facilitators of an initiative, which is a Google initiative called I Am Remarkable. And it's an initiative that really focuses on empowering women and underrepresented groups with self-promotion, because it's something that women really do struggle to do. And I think it's something that we often shy away from. And when I attended that workshop as part of our International Women's Day celebrations in 2018, it really just, it was so powerful. It was typical Google in the sense that it was quite a simple concept, but it was just so powerful and impactful. And I really came away from there like, I really want to do this. Like, I want to be, and they openly say, like, if you want to be a facilitator, come on board, because the more we get more people doing this, the better it'll be. And it really is such a powerful workshop to do. So I decided to kind of sign up and become a facilitator myself. And we now offer these workshops, which are open to everyone. Like, and it's great that if men do come along, because the more allies we have and the more that they recognise the challenges that we have in the workplace, and the challenges that women have with self-advocacy and self-promotion, you know, it's great that if they come along as well. So yeah, we now do these workshops quarterly, offer these quarterly. We let our new hires know as well, our new recruits know that we have these workshops available, and that we have our employee networks, such as our gender network, our working families network, our LGBTQ+, our Beanie networks as well. So just making sure that everyone knows that we have these resources and tools available. Because for me, it's just, you know, we have so much going on with our lives, with our day jobs, but just making sure that people are aware that, you know, that they do dedicate time to self-development and growth. And something else, that another partnership that we've kind of been working on is She Has No Limits, which is a company who offer kind of webinars and mentoring and coaching and specific themed-based online trainings to kind of help with the self-advocacy side of things, and to kind of really combat the challenges that women face in the workplace. So things like imposter syndrome, positivity, networking, like the power of networking, mentoring. Like there's lots of different, every month they all have a different theme, and just making these tools and resources accessible to our employees. And the great thing is that our company dedicates and allocates a budget to our gender network and to all of our networks, because it's such an important part of our company strategy as well, and it's all part of the kind of change that we're going through as a business as well, not only from a product and user side of things, but from an employee perspective as well.
Yes, okay, amazing. And now, with the sort of experience that you've had and all the changes that you've made, what's your advice to other women who really want to challenge workplaces to benefit women and to close that gender gap?
Well, I think actually in line with the recent International Women's Day theme, which was Choose to Challenge, the real thing is to keep challenging. So your place of work and your employer should be accommodating you as much as you accommodate them with kind of doing the work. But in order to kind of get the best out of someone, you really have to make sure that the environment and the kind of benefits and everything that's in place works for that individual in order to get the best out of them. So things like flexible working and dynamic working, there was a lot of reluctance pre-pandemic around kind of flexible working and things like that. But actually, and people were quite afraid to sort of challenge it if they wanted to kind of work from home more than one day a week, or needed to leave the office early to go and pick their children up, things like that. There was challenges around that, and sort of individuals kind of opinions of it. And sometimes the challenge can be with line managers, for example. It might be that they have a different home life scenario. They might not need to leave the office early or come in a little bit later or work from home more often, but just having that sort of challenging conversation, or having an open and honest conversation. And if the answer isn't what you need in order for you to do the best and to kind of give the best and your 110%, as it were, to challenge it and to ask the questions. Ask if you don't get the answer from your line manager, speak to your HR business partner, or speak to another line manager, speak to your colleagues, because sometimes that answer isn't right, and you need to kind of keep challenging the status quo. And that's I would say would be my primary advice. And we did recently the Choose to Challenge. We set up a challenge internally to kind of support that theme and to kind of hit that sort of message home with people, in that we did a 4 Miles for Change challenge, which was kind of like a sponsored event where TMG, our company, actually sponsored employees to kind of get involved, as it were. And it was all about doing pushing yourself 4 miles more than what you would usually with your kind of your exercise or your daily activities. And the 4 miles were representative of the 4 miles that the suffragettes marched as part of the coronation procession back in 1911, I think it was. So it was kind of just tying the kind of the history of it with the kind of current day message, as it were, still, that we still need to choose to challenge. We still need to kind of be, fighting for what we need as individuals in order to kind of get the best out of us and to be equal, essentially, because men and women are different. We're biologically different. There's no argument around that, but we have to be accommodating to everyone's individual needs. And I think that's a great thing. I think Telegraph as an employer are really kind of like aware of that. They have the kind of things like flexible working, dynamic working, equal parental leave as well. So men also get 6 months paid paternity leave. Just having these equal things in place, equal measures, but also for people to be informed, kept continually informed and educated, and having the resources and tools available to them in order to kind of making sure that they are being kind of equal and having equal opportunities to everyone.
Yeah, okay, I love that. I think the big takeaway there is don't give up and keep challenging what's happening. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed our conversation and hearing from you about everything that you've done at Telegraph so far.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sam, and have a nice rest of the evening.